Hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. I am your host, Scott Brady, and we have a new segment for the podcast. We're calling it Overland News. And in general, I'm going to be joined by Brian McVickers, who is a longtime friend and someone that I work with here at Overland International. He has a real finger on the pulse of the industry and a lot of the new products that are coming into the market. So we're going to discuss new products. These are going to be all high-quality components that we've tested or that are just released, and we want to share them with the audience. And we're also going to talk a lot about some of the new vehicles. So this is going to be our Overland News segment, and it's all framed under the caveat of we are not recommending people go out and spend a bunch of money on stuff. However, there are times that equipment enables our adventure. It allows us to have maybe a little bit more comfort, a little bit more safety, or it allows us to work remotely in the field. So we're going to talk about new Overland components that are available from the industry, our experience with them, and whatever we're excited about at the time. So please enjoy this new segment, Overland News, with the Overland Journal podcast. This content is brought to you by Overland Journal, our premium quality print publication. The magazine was founded in 2006 with the goal of providing independent equipment and vehicle reviews, along with the most stunning adventures and photography. We care deeply about the countries and cultures we visit and share our experiences freely with our readers. We also have zero advertorial policy and do not accept any advertiser compensation for our reviews. By subscribing to Overland Journal, you're helping to support our employee-owned and veteran-owned publication. Your support also provides resources and funding for content like you are watching or listening to right now. You can subscribe directly on our website at overlandjournal.com. All right, Brian, let's go into the Overland News. So this is going to be a new segment for us, and thanks for being on, because you get to see a lot of this stuff before it's even available to consumers.
I see a lot firsthand, yeah.
That's right, and you're doing more and more vehicle testing, and you're doing more and more equipment evaluation. So this seems like a great opportunity for us to, at least once a quarter, go through, because there's so much coming out. There's so much new information. There's so many new components, so many new vehicles, gear, and all that premised in the fact that you don't need these things to travel. Some of them do in power travel, and some of these things just can bring joy to your life, but we're not suggesting that people go out and buy all these things, but I'll explain the ones that have been really important for me in some of my recent travels and some of the things that I'm excited about that help solve problems. But we're seeing more and more higher quality components come back into the marketplace. And we're also seeing a lot more innovation now. We got into this kind of period of time when people are doing a lot of copycatting.
I think now we're seeing some refinement.
Yeah, now we're seeing some quality coming back into the space, some refinement, some more intentionality. Some bigger companies too, which is resulting in some pretty interesting stuff.
A lot more recognition of
that's right.
Space.
Well, and I mean, a great example of that, and we can kind of get started with it, is Kuat. So Kuat is this super high-end bicycle,
beautiful bike racks,
rack company, and I had no idea that they made an Overland rack for trucks. And I take a look at the link, and it's one of the best looking truck racks that I've ever seen. The way that they incorporated this, it's kind of like this exoskeleton, but it's all one piece, so it doesn't look like Legos or an erector set. It looks really refined. So you have this 2023 truck, you have this new, handsome, modern vehicle.
It's a modern-looking rack.
It's a modern, handsome-looking rack. Now, we have not tested this rack extensively yet. We do have one that's going to be showing up any day. We're going to be installing it on one of our Project Tundras. But I'm really excited to see companies like Kuat, who makes these premium bicycle racks, now introducing components specifically for overlanding. Take a look at that Kuat rack.
They're a good example of what we're seeing more and more in the overland space. So Kuat they've always been known for very high quality products. And I think what they've done over the last few years is they've noticed that their customers are overlanding, and they're not just riding bikes. They're into this vehicle-based adventure, right? And so probably 3 or 4 years ago, they decided to go to the Overland Expo in Colorado, in Loveland, at the Mountain West show.
Sure.
And that gave them an opportunity to see these consumers firsthand.
Yeah.
And so they're getting the consumers, their customers, kind of saying, hey, here's how we use the rack. Here's what we'd like to see different or changed, or here's what we like. And then they start going to the events, and now we start to see them making a very concerted effort towards this marketplace, towards this audience.
Well, and a perfect example of that, I mean, many people who overland also mountain bike.
Right.
But the thing that was really interesting to me is how they basically made a surprisingly beautiful, effective rack. But then they took the things that they're really, really good at, and they integrated it. So one of the challenges is when you put a roof tent on top of your truck, you now don't have roof space to carry your mountain bikes anymore.
Well, and to clarify, we're talking about their transition from a hitch-mounted rack.
That's right.
To a full truck bed rack. So it's a truck bed rack that'll also have mountain bike and rooftop tent at the same time.
And that was the thing that was interesting about it, is you can mount the roof tent to the top, but then there are these super heavy-duty brackets that mount to the side of the rack system, and allows you to have a full-size roof tent and 2 mountain bikes mounted to the same platform. So again, we're seeing this innovation quality. So that's a good example of what we're talking about. And the other one, and now in full disclosure, Rocky Talkie has been a very generous supporter of the podcast, and I'm so grateful for that. But it's important for us to note that they also make products that we intentionally use because we find them to be the best in class. So we're grateful when we get the opportunity to work with companies that are helping us through taking care of things like the podcast, but then they also make a product that we're really proud to talk about. So Rocky Talkie has made these very robust USB-C chargeable, long life lithium battery walkie-talkies for quite some time. And they're very small. They're great for climbing and think of being on a motorcycle or if you're just a short distance away from the vehicle. But they just came out with a new one.
Yeah, and to give you an idea of the quality and the robustness of these radios, they were originally designed by and for mountaineers.
Yeah, and it looks like it.
Those are kind of no compromise environments.
Yeah.
And that's why they developed these radios.
And they're waterproof, IP67 rated, they're drop rated. So like all this stuff that unfortunately happens when you're overlanding, like it starts raining when you're out spotting, or you forget and you leave the radio in the back of the truck and overnight, or it's sitting on the fender when you're camping out and it gets soaked with rain, it can handle that. But what they just came out with a new model, and this is a 5-watt unit. So
higher output, further range.
That's correct. So up to a 35-mile line of sight range. This does require to go on to the FCC website, and you need to register as a GMRS user.
Is there a cost with that, or it's just $5 or something?
I think it's a very minimal cost, or it may now actually be free. But you do need to go on and register because of the power of the unit. But to get a 35-mile range, and now you don't have to do this complex installation of anything inside your vehicle. So when we are using the smaller Rocky Talkies in Africa, but Joe could be way around the corner when we're getting ready to do a video shoot, or he can even be in the village getting some supplies while I'm working on the vehicle, and he could be miles away.
You guys are still able,
and we're still able to communicate, and the clarity of the communication is really good. But I think the thing that stands out to me about the Rocky Talkies is just the quality of the construction. It's once you get a chance to actually hold one of these things in your hand that you're like, wow, this is a different level of consumer radio. And now we have 5 watts, and there's also 2 different antenna. There's a shorter antenna for when it's on your person, maybe the person's spotting, but in the vehicle you can have this taller antenna, and it also appears to be a standard antenna. Like a standardized antenna screw mount, so you could actually
use a larger antenna even.
or maybe even a
hard
mag mount, or you could use this duct on a mag mount.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of interesting developments around that. So new 5-watt Rocky-Talkie radio, which I think is pretty cool.
The other thing is the streamlined design. It doesn't have any knobs sticking out.
Yeah, there's nothing to catch.
Nothing to break off. And then they do have some sort of, I don't know if it's encryption or encoding that allows you to kind of have more of a personal channel.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's right.
Among the group.
Yeah, between the places that I've been using Rocky-Talkie radios, there's nobody that has another GMRS within 1,000 miles.
If you're at the ski resort
or at an Overland Expo, for example.
Overland Expo, whatever.
That's what we
be.
did.
Yeah.
That's what we did at the Overland Expo is we picked one of those private channels.
Yeah.
But it's also like for those that are on YouTube and you can see it, like when you fire these things up, the display is actually behind this panel. You can't even see it. So it's not a display to break.
And you can turn the beeping off.
That's
which is great.
You can't. It can be totally silent. So pretty cool product. It's nice to see them continue to be successful and to also release new products. So new Rocky-Talkie radio. One of the ones that I was most excited about, and it's also we love to help support small businesses, and that is this unique componentry modification to the Starlink antenna. Again, for those on YouTube, you can see that this is 1.9 inches thick. It converts the Starlink antenna, their new standard kind of home RV antenna, which normally has all these motors, and it has a rod that sticks out of it that can't be removed, and they get very bulky. It removes all of that, and they actually machine off the bottom of the antenna, and then they install, so all of the power supply, the router, all these other components, all the wire that you used to have to carry to go between them, it's all integrated into one unit.
So do they take an original Starlink out of the box?
I sent them my Starlink.
And then they disassemble it.
They do, and then they create new boards, and they miniaturize several things. They also convert it to 12 volts. So the antennas, like when I was traveling with it last year, the antennas were 120 volt. So you have all of that parasitic loss of conversion between the two. So they convert it to 12 volts. They integrate the Wi-Fi antenna. It is 1.9 inches thick now, removes all of the arms, and it can work flat mounted on the vehicle. And what I'm using, I was just using it on the Ram that I'm testing. They have these heavy duty magnetic feet. So I just stuck it on the top of the Ram. It has a remote control to turn it on and off. It plugs into the 12 volt of the vehicle, or you can run it off a 120. It also comes with a 120 converter, and
it's just one cable to connect it.
One single cable, and it's like a heavy duty connector, weatherproof connector, and I was doing 75 miles an hour down I-17 with broadband internet connection.
And this is on top of the cab or in the truck bed?
On top of the cab of the Ram, and it broadcasts a Wi-Fi network, broadband performance. I was on a phone call with Joe, who I was in Africa with this morning, just talking about some logistics stuff. And at the end of almost the end of the call, I'm like, dude, by the way, this entire phone call on WhatsApp,
you couldn't tell.
I was driving the Ram down, in Prescott here, down Williamson Valley Road at 60 miles an hour on the phone with him, and you would never know it. And it's just going to keep getting better and better. It's very rare that I say something is game-changing, but Starlink is game-changing.
Well, they're going to start to get smaller.
And and this thing is, I can carry it on. I'm going to carry it on with me to go to Africa. So it's a really significant new product. I'm really excited.
Is that considered like a laptop? You're going to have to take it out of your bag.
No,
put it through the
TSA,
machine.
man. TSA pre-check. It's going to raise suspicion, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and take it out of the bag to begin with. But it's very, very cool. It allows us to be in these remote, incredible places and still get work done when we need to.
Yeah.
So it enables a form of travel that I prefer because I love my job. I love what I do, but I also want to be in the middle of Rwanda while I'm doing it. And finally, there's a way for us to do that.
Yeah, it reduces so many barriers.
It completely does. And it'll work on the sailboat. It works in motion. It works on in a boat with sea state. Now, there are new marine versions that are multi-antenna, and which allows for them to take into consideration
pitch and roll.
Pitch and roll. So
what subscription do you have to have for this to work in all the places that you travel?
That is an important consideration, and it is necessary to get the global roaming package.
Okay.
So it's global mobile. There's a domestic mobile version, which is around $150, I think, a month. And then there is global roaming, which is $200 a month. And despite the fact that they list few countries that this is available, so far the people that are traveling overland with it is working everywhere. So this is totally
even in places it's not supposed to work.
Well, yeah,
supposedly.
Yeah,
from what we hear.
Yes. So it's just working everywhere, which is just
great.
incredible. Now you've been working with the ionizer. So
O3
ionizer.
O3. So that's a really probably simple to some degree, but it's they've got 3 or 4 different versions of it.
Well, we all deal with stinky campers.
It's stinky campers, stinky rooftop tents. I can't remember the last time my vehicle hasn't stunk after even a 3 to 4 day little trip.
I've traveled with you. I know.
Yeah, well, I got teenagers, and
blame it on the kids. I see, Brian.
So these little units basically convert, they produce ozone, and ozone will break down bacteria, and that's the primary cause of the smells and stinks that you get in the vehicles or in the trailers, whatever it might be. So they've got one that'll plug into a 12-volt outlet, and then they've got one that's rechargeable. And they also have this cool little duffel bag that you can take your stinky clothes or your stinky equipment, and you can put it into this duffel bag, zip it up, throw the puck in there, and an hour later you come back. Everything smells like ozone. So if you're not familiar with ozone smell,
I have no idea what ozone smells like.
It's after a rainstorm smell.
Oh, which I love that.
Right. So rainstorms with all the electricity in the air and the lightning, they actually produce ozone. So that's that fresh rain smell that you smell is actually ozone. So
I had no idea. I just learned something new.
And then you just let that smell dissipate, and then everything.
And why do you have to let it dissipate? Because it's not safe?
It's not the safest thing to breathe in.
Got it.
It's also not. Well, it's depends
we're
on
not
who you ask.
We're not
scientists.
And we're not trying to play scientists on the internet.
Some people say that you shouldn't breathe any of it. Some people say you can breathe a certain amount and it's not a big deal. They have like a big.
Well, you're breathing it in after a rainstorm.
You are, yeah. The big unit that they have, they say don't be in the same room with it.
So it has to
the
be.
Smaller units are not a big deal.
It has to be parts per million because it's displacing something. So there are other gases that we need to breathe that are being displaced.
When I went to the last Overland Expo in Colorado, and I drove that new Wrangler, the
4xe.
The 4xe.
Yeah.
When I was driving back, I had the little 12-volt unit that you just put in the cigarette lighter, and I did that, because you're using this truck for a week, it starts to stink, and so I actually had it plugged in while I was driving a little bit, and it was just a little weavy down the highway. It was fine.
A couple twitches.
Yeah. It worked out really well. You couldn't tell. You can smell it, but it doesn't affect you.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and there are times like the one solution that came to mind for me is in the Scout camper. Because it's compact. You have all of your living systems in there, including a shower that you've used where there's a shower pan that's drying out. And there's also a composting toilet on the inside. So
lots of bacteria.
Yeah, and it doesn't it normally doesn't smell bad. Like a composting toilet is it's an amazing thing, how well it works, but it has this kind of earthy compost smell. And so that my thought was when you're living out of this thing, it would probably be pretty nice. You're going to go go to dinner or whatever, and you just get the ozone thing kicking.
Yeah, you zap it for 30 minutes. You get back, you open the
windows, yeah.
And then, and it kind of neutralizes all the smells.
That's interesting.
So it doesn't smell like anything in particular once the ozone dissipates, which is really nice.
Oh, that's cool. Well, that's like a totally out of left field product that I didn't even think I ever needed, but I'm like, you know what? That would actually be pretty useful. That would be pretty
handy.
Pretty handy. All right. So now there's some other impressive new developments, like Nitto has come out with their Recon Grappler AT.
New AT tire.
That's right. And this is like a particularly robust version of an AT with also it's got a very robust shoulder lug. One of the challenges with a lot of all-terrains is chipping and chunking. Mm-hmm. So to see this heavily reinforced, robust shoulder lug, and it looks almost like a hybrid tire, so it's a little bit more of an open pattern. So I think it's going to work really well for people that are in mixed terrain, like travelers, like overlanders, where you're going from a dry climate to a wet climate back. So it's cool to see. Nitto has always been known for making very reliable, durable tires. But it's cool to see them coming out with new technology and new tread patterns, particularly ones that I think would be very useful for overlanders.
And it looks like they have the standard sizes.
Yeah.
They equivalent to 32, 33. I think they had a 35, just under a 35, and a 37 as well. Yeah,
and a bunch of different wheel diameters. And so that's cool to see how well Nitto is adopting the overland space too. So, But the other one that I think is really interesting, and you've used for a while, is the Remarkable.
I've used their first generation tablet.
That's right. So this is their second generation tablet.
With a keyboard.
That's correct. Yeah. So the reason why I've been using a Remarkable is, again, it's distraction-free creativity. Yeah. So I write now all of my content on the Remarkable because I'll download some PDFs with some interesting or some important backstory information, but I get my first draft out on the Remarkable. And my production of content, at least 50% better, probably double. I'm probably producing twice as many words per day using the Remarkable than I would with any other device, because an email comes through, some notification comes through.
Yeah, now you've got a dedicated work platform.
Yeah, or there's some specific technical thing that you're trying to articulate, and it sends you down this rabbit hole and then you have to get back into the creative space of writing. So now I'll just make a note, like to research something at the end of the first draft.
Now, how has it changed? So I have the Remarkable One tablet, which I don't use as much anymore because the reason that I got it was for notes.
Yeah.
Because I'll have my laptop and then I take a lot of notes along the way, whether for whatever calls, meetings, and just research. But the biggest limitation that I found with the Remarkable One was it doesn't transfer the files into, say, like a cloud very easily. So I couldn't transfer the files anywhere. They would just kind of like live on that thing. And it didn't work as well.
And it does that now with the Remarkable 2.
So with the Remarkable 2 will do that.
It has its own cloud service. It syncs up with all of your other devices. So if I'm like, or if I want to just grab all of the copy that I just wrote, as soon as I open up my laptop and I open up the Remarkable app on my MacBook Pro, it's all there.
And you can take instantly. It and drop it into a Word document.
Or export it as a Word document.
Oh, okay.
Or import Word documents and read them on the Remarkable.
All right. So the evolution to the version 2 is much more useful.
That's right. And one of the things that Remarkable as a company has been quite remarkable. They're very thoughtful, and they take what they do very seriously. But when I got the unit, one of the things they said was like, it's just really important for you to know that this isn't a Kindle device. But I think they're selling themselves short because, yes, you do not have the Kindle app on the Remarkable, but it can use EPUB versions of books.
They're talking about just for books.
Yeah.
Because it seems like a totally different type of device.
This is perfect for books because it's not a backlit screen. It's an organic LED screen. I read now most of the books on the Remarkable. But you're not going to get like a book that was written in 2023. on and read it on here. Not very likely, because it's not going to be available as an EPUB, or it's most likely, or it's not going to be available as a PDF. But what it forced me to do was come back to first principles reading. So I'm bringing down books that have been in print for a very long time, so and they're available as an EPUB, or they're available as a PDF. You know, like a Richard Feynman book that I just downloaded, and others that are they're very much first principle thinking, and it's forcing me to read in a different way instead of just whatever the book of the day is. It's like, let's get back to these really original thinkers. And it's not to say that there aren't original thinkers in 2023, because there absolutely are, but there's a lot of things that can be learned by reading older books. Yeah. So I'm doing that. I'm reading extensively now on the Remarkable as well. So, and then the last thing that I think is what makes it really interesting for those of us that are creatives is the fact that they now have this folio, which is their keyboard accessory. And it
has a pen as well.
It does. Yeah. And I'm left-handed, and I have terrible penmanship. So I think I've attempted one note on here, but I can type like nobody's business.
But it'll convert your handwriting to text as well.
It tries.
Oh, in everybody else's case but yours.
Yeah, I'm sure it works perfect for everyone else on the planet except for me.
You could be a new case study.
Exactly. But I can type really fast, so I don't know what my typing speed is, but it blazing, like the thing has smoke coming out of it, because that's what I do all day, most days. So, and the keyboard is really good. It's very responsive. It works really well it feels tightly integrated. So yeah, we just did that today, doing the notes to get ready for this podcast. So for the traveler, you can read books, you can write your daily journals, you can write notes, but do it in this undistracted way where you're able to just really focus on the craft, on the deeper work. So I've really appreciated the Remarkable.
Yeah, that's great.
So that was one that personally I've been using more recently, the Potato and the Remarkable. All right. So the other thing that's come out recently out in the news is the new Red Arc lithium ion batteries are now available in North America.
150 amp hour battery.
Yeah. And they have a couple different sizes that are available in other markets, primarily in Australia. But for the United States, at least initially, there is this very compact lithium-ion battery that is 150 amp hours, which is going to meet the needs of the vast majority of overland travelers, unless you are trying to run an air conditioner or you're trying to run a very large, complex camper system. 150 amp hours is a great number. If you were to put two of them in there, then now all of a sudden you're running Starlink, no problem.
You're running plenty of power.
Exactly. But the reason why I think these are notable is, and Red Arc is almost always notable because of the quality of their components and the fact that Red Arc specifically makes electronics for overland travelers. But what makes this battery really unique is that it has 70% higher energy density, which means if you just translate that into a 150 amp hour battery, it is now going to be 70% smaller for the same power output. So you end up with this very compact, very high output battery from Red Arc, which I think is really cool.
It looks like a normal size, relatively normal size battery compared to the thing with the ropes on either end. It's just a big D3.
It's just a compact, massive amount of power in it at 150 amp hours. So, and then the other thing that's really relevant, because sometimes when you're traveling from campsite to campsite, you don't have a lot of time to recharge, especially a battery that big. So if you had two of them, if you had 300 amp hours in there and you're trying to charge quickly under a short period of time, it now has a much faster charge rate than most of the other batteries on the market. So the fact that while your Wrangler's mainlining 220 amps into the system, it can actually consume that and charge very quickly.
Can it do that spliced into an existing system, or does it need a Red Arc system to do that?
It does. It looks as if all the information that I've looked at, it has a charge profile that's similar to other lithium-ion batteries, which means if you have an existing system that is not or a solar charging system that is not a red arc, but it has a lithium charge profile available, then you can set it to work for that.
That's great.
So really cool to see Red Arc making those batteries available in the U.S., and they just keep adding new products, which is really exciting. The other thing I thought was really interesting was to see ARB announce their new trailer. So they announced the Earth Camper. So this looks like a gigantic injection molded. Yeah, it does. Injection cool. Molded. It's very cool. And a lot of people in the U.S. don't know that ARB has tons of experience with truck toppers. So they're used to working with injection molded components and molding these complex shapes and very modern designs. So they just found a way to do that.
That's in Australia. A lot of their catalog doesn't make it to the U.S.
That's correct, and it makes sense. I mean, trying to ship a truck camper, a truck capper to the U.S., you're just not. There's not going to be enough margin to make that work, most likely. Whereas this trailer, with it having all of this years of ARB experience built into it, they literally built their ultimate Overland trailer. So it'll be interesting to see if the Earth Camper comes to the United States, because it looks really suitable to the task. It
does, and it has enough style differences to it that I think it would kind of stand out.
And it meets my first requirement of the trailer, which means you need to be able to sleep inside of it. If you're just using a trailer to haul around a roof tent, it doesn't make any sense to me. It may make sense to somebody. It makes no sense to me. You might as well just put the roof tent on the car and save yourself.
Different use cases for
it. But for the most part, if you can sleep inside the tent or inside the trailer, you've now added a level of capability that's difficult to employ with a typical pickup truck or SUV. So this is a large sleep inside teardrop style, but robust off-road camper, which is kind of cool. So I like that. Like to see ARB just like trying totally new stuff. So
they every year they've got a couple of new products.
Yeah, and a lot of times they just come out of left field in a way that you don't expect, and then you're like, oh, that totally makes sense in hindsight. So that's very cool. Another product I've been using recently is the Garmin Tread. So I took that with me to Africa. In my experience traveling around the African continent, you have to have a Garmin device because you need to have Tracks for Africa. So Tracks for Africa is available as an app on your phone or your tablet. It does not work very well. I use it as a worst case scenario backup, but
the works best on the Garmin.
But it's a totally different solution. So like the one that they have in the app, I'm sure it's even a different development team. It feels like a totally different experience between the Tracks for Africa app and the Tracks for Africa.
And is Tracks for Africa like user information based?
A lot of it is. They do a lot of ground truthing, but they also collect information, and they're smart about it. So they wait until they get a couple tracks in the same area, and then they ground truth them by basically taking a larger sample set.
Right.
And then they add those tracks to the database, and they also do fairly regular updates of their data. But it is, I mean, literally, Joe and I are driving the Grenadier down this track in Mozambique, and here very clearly on the Tracks for Africa it says landmines.
Oh,
so like
that's a different day.
You don't want to go. Yeah, you don't want to go over to where the landmines are. But like that's something that a Google map would never show you, or a sat map would never show you.
And have all the tracks been fairly accurate?
Yeah, like it's just so good.
Yeah.
It's so good. Now their data gets a little less robust in the northern parts of Western Africa, but it's there's nothing like it, and it displays best on the Garmin device. The other reason why I always use a Garmin device is because I need the reliability of track recording. I'm sure everybody that's listening has experienced this, but then it happens with all of them. Gaia, all of them. They just randomly stop tracking stuff. And the way that I understand it is it's not a Gaia problem. It's an edge of service problem. Mm-hmm. So like the phone gets just on the edge of service, and it causes some disconnect between cell phone towers and the internal GPS, and it just stops recording your track.
Everything shuts down. I've had that happen a few times, especially when you get to the edge of their mapping area.
Yeah, that's right. So it's have to have a backup. I still use an iPad. I still like Gaia because of the different layers. I use it for some sat map stuff. But when I'm traveling in Africa and when I'm traveling anywhere, I always run a Garmin because I know I'm going to get this reliable track recording. And reliable track recording has two really beneficial outcomes. You can share the track with others that want to do the same trip, or keep it for your own memories and referring back to. But the other reason why you do it is a safety reason, is that you want to be able to breadcrumb, turn around, and follow your track back out.
And have you tried using your watch, your Garmin watch, as a redundancy?
I use it all the time for hiking, because now that I have the potato, I have no other way to like check a map if I'm out hiking. And I intentionally don't really look at the Garmin. I track every hike on the Garmin, but I intentionally don't look at it because I've enjoyed like this kind of feeling of having to pay attention where I'm walking now.
Just so you don't get lost.
Yeah.
Sure.
Whereas for years, I've always had my phone on me, and I'm like, I got to turn left on FR 320 something, and you just go out and 12 miles later, you end up back at your car, and you really have no idea where you were.
Right.
And I'm enjoying having to stop and look at signs or think about the route or research it ahead of time. But I do always have the Garmin watch map available if I had to. But and the Garmin watches they're pretty insane.
Yeah, it's amazing how much they put into that little.
Well, and the reason why they work way better for travel than an Apple Watch or anything else is the amount of days that they last.
The battery life is
significant. It's the one
well over 25 days.
Yeah, and if you do a lot of hiking and where you're doing GPS stuff, it's much less than that, but it's still like 7, 8, 9 days of battery power, and you don't get that in an Apple Watch. And also, like, the intrusive parts of the Apple Watch don't exist on the Garmin. And you don't feel like you got to be like answering a text on your watch. It's like the watch works really good as a watch. It does a good job of tracking my sleep. It does a good job of tracking all of my exercise and other things. But then it has these Overland related tools on it, like maps, compass, elevation, speed over ground, all these other things that are unique to a Garmin watch. It's kind of become the watch of choice for me.
Yeah, it's a nice backup to the tread.
Yeah, and I have not used my Apple Watch since I got the Garmin on my wrist. There are times that I'll run an analog watch because I just prefer it sometimes. But like for travel, it's a total game changer. It's another game changer product. It's really good. It's really good. All right. Oh yeah, and like when we were on the sailboat, didn't Rusty like have a way to like track the boat data on his watch?
He's got one that interfaces with the autopilot and all the
That's crazy.
The entire system. So he was standing up on the bow of the boat, clicking things on his watch to make the boat turn.
Yeah, that's pretty.
So
that's pretty amazing.
I think they do a really good job of having all their products talk to one another.
Yeah.
So
the one thing that I've noticed from getting deeper in the Garmin ecosystem is every interaction that I have with the product feels very professional. Mm-hmm. Whereas a lot of other tools that especially electronics that we integrate with, they feel very consumer grade. Whereas that's one thing I've been really impressed with on the Garmin stuff is it all feels very professional, professional grade tools, which means that it doesn't do some of the whiz-bang stuff that people get used to with other devices, but it does all the important things perfectly every time, and that's the rarity.
Yeah, I haven't hit any dead ends with it.
Yeah.
So I think what you're talking about is some consumer products it does everything except the thing that you should think that it could do, and with the Garmin stuff, it just doesn't do it well. It tells you that it's going to do,
and it does it well, and it does it like at a level of a professional activity. Like just tracking exercise on the Garmin is a better result. Like I get more consistent results from that, and it doesn't lock up. It doesn't.
I've got some friends who swear by the athletic training components that they have.
Yeah.
So that'll monitor your sleep, it'll monitor all your workouts, and then it tells you when to rest.
Yeah.
It'll tell you like today, don't let your heart rate go over 115. It's pretty accurate.
I use it. I use the app on the iPad, and I upload everything to the watch, and I do not do any physical exercise without running it through the Garmin because it has been so effective. Like if I don't sleep well, it helps me adjust those goals to make sure that I'm not overstressing my body. And, I'm not, 20 years old anymore. So like I want my body to perform.
You need the recovery time.
I do. I need the recovery time. So, Garmin watch was pretty good too. Another one that you brought up was that new Intrepid roof tent. Tell me about
the
that.
rooftop tent. Yeah. One of the things I like about the Intrepid is it's another example of innovation in the rooftop tent market, where I think you see a lot of regurgitated ideas, right?
Yeah.
A lot of recycled ideas where, they're either doing something that's already been done or they're ordering from the same factory and just putting a different logo on it. The Intrepid, if you can imagine, it looks like a wedge tent, but instead of just a kind of 45-degree angled wedge, the roof has an extra hinge in it. So when it opens, it kind of opens like that. So this entire area becomes your living space instead of just this.
Oh, got it.
Right.
So you end up with a lot more usable space.
A lot more usable space. You could, instead of like.
And is it a hard shell or is it soft shell?
It's a hard shell.
Wow, cool.
It's a hard shell that opens up with 2 hinges, and then it's got soft sides.
Nice.
Three soft sides.
Yeah,
to it.
sure.
So you can actually sit 2 people the length of the tent, whereas a lot of wedge tents you could maybe sit 2 people side by side.
Yeah.
It just gives you a lot more space it's innovative, but looks like a fairly simple innovation. I mean, they just added a hinge and it completely changed the amount of usable space.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and it looks good too. Yeah, it's nice to see people coming up with new ideas instead of just copying others. So, well, let's switch topics into vehicles. You've been doing some more vehicle testing, and most recently, you were on the Chevy Bison launch with a bunch of the different.
Yeah, there was the ZR2 Bison family. So it included the Colorado and the Silverado HD, which was a 2500 HD.
Did it also have the 1500?
Had the
full size?
It had the full size 1500 with the new diesel engine.
Yeah. What'd you think of that new diesel?
I liked it. I only got to drive it for probably about 30 minutes.
Yeah.
They let us drive that. They let everybody have a turn to drive that for about 30 minutes on the first day.
Sure.
It wasn't a very heavy focus.
Right.
The only thing different about the vehicle is the engine.
Yeah.
But as far as the engine goes, I did.
And that's a 3-liter diesel?
I did about 15 minutes of highway speeds up to about 75, and then did a very soft, sandy dirt track, a sandy track in the desert with some hard embedded rock.
Yeah.
And it was effortless. I actually kept it in 4 high because 4 low with that diesel had so much torque that it was for what we were flat.
Yeah,
and
sure.
You really couldn't drive it because it had so much low end torque.
Yeah.
And so I just kept it in 4 high, and it was effortless to drive.
Yeah, this is the evolution of the 3-liter that's in the AT4 project vehicle that we've got. And it's so encouraging to see Chevrolet and GMC continuing with that power plant, because it's the best motor I've ever had in any vehicle I've ever owned. Like to get 20, 21 miles of the gallon out of a full-size truck on 35s is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it does it.
They really seem to be I met with their whole engineering team and their design team. They seem to be doing an exceptional job at not just listening to the consumer, but seeing and understanding how the consumer is using their vehicles.
Yeah.
And then providing solutions that, not just because they look good on a design board, but because they're going to be functional in a day-to-day use.
And same thing applies to GMC, but to see like an AEV edition, either ZR2 or an AT4X, so front and rear lockers,
35s.
the 35-inch tall tires, AEV bumpers front and rear, and a 3-liter turbo diesel in a half-ton truck is just like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
The only thing that I would love to see improve with some of those trucks is the payload. So when you get them optioned up that way, it can be around 1,000 pounds of payload, which people will say like, oh, that's a half ton. Well, it's actually a 5-passenger half ton. So you have to take 150 to 175 pounds, depending on the each manufacturer uses a different metric, or there are different standards for what an occupant weight is considered standardized to. But if you used 150 pounds as that number and you have 5 passengers in there, so you've got
you're eating into the
you have 750
pounds.
You have 750 pounds of passengers, so it really should be 1,750 pounds of payload in that vehicle to make it a half ton, because it needs to be able to carry a half ton of payload and 5 passengers.
Right.
So,
and every passenger is going to have, it's more than 150 because everybody's got a bag.
But it's okay to make it. It's okay to
pounds a person.
It's okay to make it like whatever the standard is. Chevy doesn't need to reinvent that. And this is not unique to Chevy.
No,
this
it's
is
everybody.
All of the manufacturers of these half-ton trucks are not making half-ton pickups. They are making, like, you and I could not go in most of these half-ton trucks with the 2 of us and 2 motorcycles. We could not carry it.
You think we'd tap out?
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
Like if you and I had 2, KLR 650s in the bed, and you and I both weigh a svelte 205, 200-ish. You couldn't do it.
Yeah.
You could not carry 2 motorcycles and two buddies to go out for the day and and that just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So you got to have the payload needs to be based upon the standard, which is either 150 or 175 pounds, depending on the standard, per passenger, 5 passengers, plus 1,000 pounds, which is a half ton.
But we've seen this from every manufacturer. Every manufacturer is struggling.
Not with Ford.
You don't think?
Like Ford does a lot of things average. They do payload really well. Like they get it. If you get a new Raptor R, 1,750 pounds of payload.
Okay.
5 passenger, 1,000 pounds of payload. They get it. So it can be done, and it is being done.
Yeah.
Like it can be done for sure. So, and it looked like a really challenging route. Johnson Valley, right?
It was Johnson Valley, and a few of us were talking about it. The coolest part about this, and I asked a couple of the spotters and a couple of the guys who pre-ran, they didn't manicure the route. We've been on, vehicle drives before where they can the experience, right?
Sure.
Everything is pre-planned. They know
and it
what
just
you're gonna walk
barely
away with,
fits,
right?
yeah.
And so we went out into Johnson Valley. We based out of it's called Lasertown.
Okay.
Which I had never been to before.
I have no idea where that's at.
It's a collection of containers out in the middle of the desert, and it's pretty cool, right? And they've got a bunch of little art installations, and I think for King of the Hammers, it's kind of party central.
Sure.
So we started out of Lasertown, and so we took both trucks up. It was called the short bus, and it was pretty steep getting up, steep and loose, and then going down the backside. Every truck was on 3 wheels going down. So that was the first little trail that we did. Then what I was really impressed with was the second trail. I think it was Lower Johnson Valley. It was it's a little chute of a trail, but when you look at it from the bottom, it looks like a rock field, but there's a little track that kind of interweaves the big rocks. And the best example of what they were trying to showcase. And so I was driving the Colorado ZR2 Bison. Mm-hmm. And they're really proud of the rock rails and the skid plates. And
all these, boron steel.
Yeah, it's really well built and really well put together. So we were going up. There's a shelf, probably about a 4-foot shelf. And to get to the 4-foot shelf, there's this big boulder that could have very easily been moved, but they chose to just leave it there. And it had been crossed so many times, it was getting unstable, so it would roll around a little bit. And so you get up over it, and the other thing is you could probably have gone to the right of it. You probably could have sneaked around the big boulder.
Sure.
But they've got their spotting team, and they spotted us straight over, so driver's side front, right over this boulder. And you drop down. We're on 35s, and we drop down the other side of it, and now you're sitting on the rock rail on this boulder. And we, when we go drive trucks,
sure, we don't do that.
We don't do that. We were very, very careful did not touch anything.
Yeah.
And I even looked at the guy and I said, I really don't like touching stuff with the trucks.
Yeah.
And he goes, no. I want you to do what you're doing. That's why I put you here.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, now what do you want me to do? And he goes, drive it. And so I drove it, and that boulder scraped the entire length of that rock rail.
Wow.
And then you get out and you go up the ledge. And part of the reason that they had it there is when you did get the front end up the ledge, your back end is right on top of that boulder.
Sure.
Right. And then you go the rest of the way and everything's fine. And I got out and I looked at the rock rail, and it was like it never happened.
Wow.
So not only the finish and the coating was incredibly durable because it didn't have any really visible damage to it. It had
Sure.
some dirt and dust on it.
Sure.
But it didn't flex. It didn't bend.
Wow.
And I looked at him, I was talking to him, and he's like, I purposely want you guys to see how thoughtfully we've built these vehicles.
Yeah, they're made from the beginning to be like really exceptional overland vehicles. I mean, again, like we talked about a few minutes ago, but factory 35s, factory AEV wheels, factory AEV bumpers, boron steel skid plates, front and rear lockers, full length rock rails. It's insane.
Yeah, it's a full package.
It's insane. It's so insane.
And then we, at the same day, then we swapped around a little bit and we drove the 2500 HD ZR2 Bison, and we took it on the same trails as the Colorado.
Wow.
So you've got this, it's a much bigger platform. The interesting thing about that truck is when you walk around it on the outside, it doesn't look that big. When you get into it to drive it, it feels quite big.
Gigantic.
It's a big truck from the
sure.
inside. It was big enough that, I had the driver's seat, jacked as far up as I could to see over the hood.
Sure.
And but then they have this great camera system on both trucks. They have a front and rear camera mounted to the chassis underneath. So you can scroll through all the video feed, and you can see a front view, a rear view, you can see side views to see all four corners, and it doesn't time out. So you could be driving 50 miles an hour and the camera feed is still good.
Yeah.
A lot of vehicles we've seen before, they've got the see-through hood, whatever it is, and
shuts off at 5-6 miles an hour.
You get up to, barely to 10 miles an hour, and now it goes away.
Yeah.
This will stay on until you turn it off, which was great in the desert, and it was great going downhill in that 2500 HD because
you
can't see anything.
Yeah.
And so now you can see, it's like looking through the front of the vehicle.
That's cool.
So that was pretty neat.
That's awesome. Yeah, and then a couple announcements. BMW just announced the new 1300 GS, which is exciting to see. It's 25 pounds lighter, which is also encouraging to see. So they keep getting lighter and more effective.
So the 1300 is 25 pounds lighter than the 1200.
Than the 1250 that
1250.
It's leaving. So they are being a little more conservative on horsepower, which I do not see as a bad thing. I think it's 140 or 147 horsepower.
That is plenty.
It's plenty. It is plenty. So like, I'm so glad they finally like one of the manufacturers is just like not trying to pursue horsepower numbers in an adventure bike, because after about 100 horsepower in almost every off-road condition, it's not an advantage. It's a disadvantage. Yeah. So it just ends up just tearing up the rear tire that much faster. And then Triumph has some updates to their new 1200. I'm a huge fan of the 1200 XE bike that I rode around South Africa and into Swaziland. Really like that bike. So it's great to see them continuing to innovate with that platform. But the one that I really want to talk about, and we'll spend a few minutes on that, is the new Toyota 250 platform. So it's going to be available in a Land Cruiser 250, and then it's going to be available in the new Lexus GX. The powertrains are different. Mm-hmm. The price points are also quite a bit different. But when you look at the two of them, you can tell that they are very much built upon the same platform.
No, I've seen the Land Cruiser firsthand.
Yeah.
And you got to see the Lexus firsthand.
I did.
Yeah.
What did you think of the Land Cruiser?
I think it's going to be a great addition to the marketplace. I think it's going to be a really nice mid-priced solution.
Yeah.
I think from a functionality side, it does everything that you're going to want it to do.
Yeah.
From a price tag, starting around, I think they said it starts at 55,000. So,
which in 2023 all of a sudden seems cheap.
It does,
or it seems affordable.
Yeah,
but that's still so much money.
I think the reason it feels affordable is everything else in that class is going to start 75, 80.
Right.
Right. I mean, even in some ways, in many ways, it's replacing the 200 that we had available in the U.S. The 200 started at $88,000.
Well, and I wonder how it's going to impact, or if it just replaces both the 200 and the 4Runner. It seems like that would be something that would make sense, because the only other platform, I mean, they would build the 4Runner on the 250 platform, because the 4Runner has always traditionally been built on the Prado platform, which the Prado 150 is the precursor to this vehicle that was the Land Cruiser 2 was built on, the Prado was built on, and then the most recent 4Runner was also built on it. So I wonder if this new Land Cruiser is going to replace both.
All I can say is that these guys think about this stuff a lot more than we give them credit for.
Yeah.
There were quite a few people who asked direct questions in person about the 4Runner, and there were no answers given.
Yeah.
But what I did pick up, when you look at historically over the past few years, when they took the 200 series away, they knew what they were doing, in the sense of they took the 200 series away knowing that they were going to have the 250 launching now.
Yeah.
Right. And so they got beat up a lot in social media, and just from the consumer side, they got beat up a lot by taking the 200 series away. But there was kind of this grand plan the entire time.
Yeah, it's Toyota. They always have a grand plan.
They got a grand plan. I mean, when they took the 200 away, they knew that they had the 250 coming.
Yeah.
Right. And so
they would have to. It already would have had to have been into design stage.
Yeah. So I don't think the 4Runner is going away. I think there's some.
Yeah, but it would be really
difficult.
difficult.
There's a plan for the 4Runner.
Yeah,
something else is going to happen.
It would have to be. It would have to be, and it would have to be such a departure. But the 250 is a departure from the 200. The 200 is the big body J series global Land Cruiser platform.
The 250 is quite smaller than the 200.
Well, in some ways, it's a little bit narrower.
A couple inches here or there.
Yeah, it's a little bit narrower.
But the feeling you get when you walk up to the 250, the 200 and even the 300, if you've had the chance, you've seen the 300.
Yeah, I've driven it. It's amazing.
And those vehicles have, to me, that's kind of this bulbous, larger vehicle feeling.
For sure.
Right? And just the way that the sheet metal's formed and everything else. Yep. And the 250 feels smaller. Yeah. And it presents smaller when you walk up to it.
I would agree, and the Lexus is the same way.
Yeah.
But it's just really important. Like, some people are saying, "Oh, it's not a Land Cruiser." They don't understand Land Cruiser history if they say that.
Right.
Because there have been lots of Land Cruiser 2s. So these are vehicles that are called Land Cruisers. They're a Land Cruiser 2, or they're called a Prado in some markets.
Yeah.
But they are still a Land Cruiser, but they are not the heavy-duty Land Cruiser. So that is the Land Cruiser 300, which is the most robust, durable global platform that they make in a passenger wagon. The 250 is like saying a Prado or saying a Land Cruiser 2. So, but that is not to take anything away from it. It is deserving of the Land Cruiser name. It is going to be, and no doubt in my mind, it's going to be an exceptional vehicle for North American overland travelers. And the fact that it might be available actually in the mid-50s is pretty impressive. The GX is going to have more power. It's going to have more luxury. But Lexus is taking overlanding serious too. So they're going to have this Overtrail version that has got 33-inch tall tires and rear locking differential and crawl control and, these high clearance bumpers. And so it's just awesome to see.
They're bringing a lot more attainability.
I love it. And I'm such a fan of Toyota. I've literally trusted my life to this brand and around the world. And to see them, like the director of marketing for Toyota, to say we're all in on overlanding, that is so cool to hear from a brand that really has made world-class overland vehicles for many decades. To see that Toyota North America is all in on overlanding is so exciting for us, and it's just a really important thing to see that vehicle is available. It leaves a lot of questions around the 4Runner. It also clearly tells us that their intention is not to bring in the 300 other than in the Lexus LX600 variant. So we're not likely to see a 300 series Land Cruiser here.
No, I don't think it's on the plan for them.
Yeah, but again, it's like it would be so easy to just for like some troll on the internet to just say like it's not a Land Cruiser or you didn't bring us the right car. They brought us exactly the right car.
Yeah, granted, none of us have had the chance to drive it yet.
Yeah,
but on paper and in person, when you get to poke around it, it's got everything.
It looks great.
Want.
It looks great,
and it's comfortable. I got to sit in it. Everything about it, the
upright seating position and the good clearance. And it's just going to be awesome. And the fact that it's in 2023 terms, it's reasonably priced is just so good. It's so good. So props to Toyota for that. I'm really excited to see how they come out, how it's optioned, and then of course the chance for us to drive it. The other vehicles that I've been spending some time in the new Ram Rebel 2500, they now have a rear locking differential in the vehicle. This is also available in a solid rear. It's solid front axle, solid rear axle, but the rear axle is a 5-link coil sprung suspension system. The truck is showing its age a little bit. The engine is definitely showing its age a little bit, but the interior is just very well done. And Rams, because of AEV, are really the full-size truck of choice for most people. And the fact that you can now get it with a factory rear locker is another really important.
And this has all the AEV goodies on it?
It does not. It's just it's their Ram Rebel package. Okay. But that is the package that you would use as the baseline for building an AEV truck.
Okay.
Yeah, an AEV Prospector.
Yeah.
But the problem with Prospectors in the last couple of years was the lack of availability of a rear locker. So it's not that they were incapable off road because they were on 40, so they were fine. But a rear locking differential, it allows us to go slower. It allows us to show more mechanical sympathy to the vehicle, and most important, in most cases, it allows us to do less trail damage. Mm-hmm. Anytime we can introduce less wheel spin, we're doing less damage to the trails that we want to keep open as a community. So being responsible and activating a rear locker when you have the opportunity to. And as travelers, we're oftentimes super remote. So we want to have as much capability as we can get, especially in areas that are really challenging.
It's surprising how just turn on the locker kind of
settles everything down.
It gets rid of the drama.
It does.
You can get through the obstacle and then move on.
Yeah.
This is, like you said, the remote travel. You're not doing it for sport.
No.
It's
adventure.
Yeah.
And you want to get to the other end. You want to get your family.
Preserve the asset.
Yeah, you want to get your family to the other end. Another quick note, because we're getting to time here, but Grenadier has announced their dealer network, so that's exciting to see. It looks like they're going to have deliveries as soon as the end of 2023. So those that took the risk and put their deposits down and got the vehicle reserved, they're going to get them pretty soon. The vehicle has exceeded my expectations in Africa. We have not had any failures with the vehicle. And so far it's just clearly built for Africa. It's performing well. So it'll be cool to see people finally getting them in the U.S.
Yeah, and the reports from Australia has seen a lot of delivery.
That's right. So is South Africa and Europe's seeing deliveries. So it seems like, and they've got some recent updates that they did that, just over this at the dealership, like anything else, they're continuing to update the vehicle and offer new options and just improve performance. So it's good to see that in the Grenadier. But any other new vehicles or new things that you wanted to chat on?
I think we've covered a lot. We've got another couple of drives coming up. There's a GMC drive we'll be on in a couple of weeks. And yeah, it's been a busy year for new vehicles and vehicle launches. So.
Yeah, it's like the golden age of of Overland vehicles. We thought for sure that was in the 1990s with an 80 series Land Cruiser and a Land Rover Defender. But like if you were to drive a 300 Land Cruiser and compare it to an 80 series, like there's so much better now.
The one thing I've noticed is there's a lot more vehicles that I think you could be completely fine driving off the lot.
Yeah.
Without, it used to be, okay, we're going to drive that. I'm going to get that as a platform, and then I'm going to swap out. I'm going to re-engineer everything, and I'm going to add all these things to it. And now it seems like the OEMs have been listening and watching.
Yeah.
And now you can do so much more with the vehicle right off the lot, and just saves in the long run, whether it's time and effort. So
look at that, look at that Bison, Colorado, 35,
does everything you need.
35s and lockers front and rear, and an available winch. It's just literally, it's like unbelievable.
And it's a snappy little truck.
Yeah, they're cool. 300 horsepower,
fun to drive.
Yeah, 300 horsepower. They're sweet. They're super sweet.
The only interesting thing from a usability standpoint is they had to take that 35-inch tire and mount it in the bed of the truck. So they actually came up with a factory mount. It's vertical in the front driver's side corner of the truck. So it's going to reduce your capacity a little bit when it comes to loading things into the bed of the truck.
Somebody will come out with a swing out tire, or AEV will probably release a swing out tire carrier for their bumper.
It didn't impact driving at all. You don't even notice that it's there.
Yeah, because it's behind the driver, so it doesn't block the driver's view.
Right. Yeah.
Or not much of it with the rear view
But from using the bed, that was the only.
Oh, that's good.
Part.
Yeah, that's good. Good feedback.
A lot of consumers wind up doing that anyway. So.
Well, things just keep getting more exciting in the Overland space, which is why we've announced this new Overland News segment of the podcast. So look for these to come out about once a quarter. If you're looking for the newest, most interesting stuff to come on the market in the Overland space, we're going to continue to provide these. We love your feedback. You can reach me, scott.a.brady on Instagram, or you can reach out to Brian. What's your Instagram?
It's at McVickers.
And what's your cell phone number so they can call you directly with any questions?
You can go to our website and find my email.
So
we also we got the weekly newsletter.
That's right.
We do, and we've got the news of the week on Expedition Portal.
So that's true. Yeah, go to expeditionportal.com for the Overland News of the Week, and then you can also subscribe to our newsletter. If you go to overlandjournal.com, you'll see the prompt to subscribe to the newsletter, where we do provide a lot of these updates too. And one of the things that we want to do real quick is actually bring in the cornerstone of the Overland Journal podcast, the person that makes all of this possible, Paula Burr. Paula has been involved with the podcast since almost the very beginning, a longtime friend and Overland traveler. But the reason why we're bringing Paula on is one of the organizations that we really believe in at Overland International is the Rebelle Rally. It is an incredible event that gives the opportunity for travelers to go out and test their skills, their navigation skills, working as a team. They're not able to use a GPS. This is all paper map, compass, dead reckoning, triangulation, and operating usually mostly stock vehicles throughout really rugged terrain in the United States West. So Paula, congratulations on being able to participate in the Rebelle Rally.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
Well, we're excited to have you go because you have had this as a bucket list item for a very long time. And we were so lucky because Scott Brown from Jeep reached out and said, hey, we think we've got a slot in the Rebelle Rally for someone to participate. And I said, I've got just the right person. So you get to check off a bucket list item, and you've also been doing a bunch of training for it. So what are some of the things you've been doing to prepare for the event?
I've been trying to do as much as possible. I know it's not the full rally that I get to do, but I would like to be prepared as much as possible. So I've driven a couple places and some plotting and some road maps and stuff.
No, you've been doing
all the
great.
Maps, all the plotting.
That's right.
All the math.
All the math. I remember you saying, Scott, I can't math anymore right now. Yeah, but and you've gotten a lot of help from people that are very experienced with the event. Nina Barlow is a friend of both of ours. She's been a big friend of the industry. She's been a hugely successful participant in the Rebelle Rally.
Yep.
And if I remember, you went out to the Glamis Dunes and you've done some training with her there. You've also done training in Sedona. And then recently you've been working with some of her team on some of the mapping and plotting. So what are you going to be driving during the event?
I think it's a 4xe, a Jeep 4xe.
Yeah, so a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 4xe, I believe, is the one that you're going to be driving. And what a capable vehicle for that. And Jeep has been a big supporter of the Rebelle Rally, and I'm grateful for that too. I'm seeing a lot of manufacturers participate in the event, which I think is a great way to empower people to get out and explore in this way. It's a really important event for the industry. And Paula, we're so excited for you to go do the Rebelle Rally. What are you most looking forward to in the event?
I think just being outside and off the grid and just being reliable with my partner out in the middle of wherever we are.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to be able to totally disconnect from work. Well, Paula, we're so excited to have you do the event, and we're going to get an update from you when the event is over and hear some of the things that you learned along the way. But have such an amazing journey on your way out to the Rebelle Rally and participating in such a wonderful event.
Yeah, thanks.
And thanks for being on the
Scott
podcast. Yeah, exactly. And thanks for being on the podcast, Paul. I'm sorry to turn the cameras on you, but we're just so excited for you to be able to go.
I'm really grateful for this opportunity.
Yeah, we are too. Awesome, Paula.
Thanks, Scott.
You're welcome. We're grateful to have this on the podcast, and we thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, everybody.